Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Swami Jyotirmayananda Society, our journey to self-realization. Please subscribe our channel for the mystical meanings and to enjoy daily satsang. We are currently exploring the book Yoga Essays for Self-Improvement, authored by Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, and currently we are studying the chapter of moving from the world of the senses to the immortal abode of the self. Commentaries by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. A life that learns to place itself under the guidance of reason abounds with joy. Adversities exist only as long as there is a sense of slavery to the senses. A man of reason does not grieve over the transient developments of the world. He knows better. Every flower that blooms must wither away. Every human body must gradually succumb to old age and death. So, while most people are afraid of this, advanced aspirant, a spiritually realized soul is beyond all fears. He looks at his body just like he looks at his external object, house, car, etc. He is not overly attached to it. He knows the spirit within is like a bird that can fly away anytime. Every union must end in separation. The tender leaves that deck a tree in spring must gradually grow, age, turn yellow, and then fall. Through ceaseless change, nature continues to present different conditions before the individual soul. Dependence upon the senses places one in a world of mechanical repetitions and chaotic developments. But a person who has surrendered his mind and senses to the luminous guidance of his intellect perceives a world of divine harmony. There is a procession of newness in everyday life. He does not gather impressions of boredom as time passes by. Rather, he continues to bathe himself in the shower of increasing joy and freedom. So he continues to renew. While the purified intellect guides the mind and the senses, it in turn is guided, inspired, and sustained by the light of the self. So that's the self is eventually doing everything. All our movements, action, talking, walking is all happening through the light of that self. But since that is shining the intellect shining the mind is shining the senses, and the senses are the ultimate objects of attraction, we get illusioned. We think like the mirage, we run after imaginary water. So there is a wide world, vast world of experience that cannot be encompassed by the intellect. It must surrender to the light of the self by developing Shraddha, which is faith and divine love. The higher practices of Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga are directed towards preparing the intellect to be dominated and overpowered by its indwelling reality, the self. What is needed is an integral surrender to the divine presence to allow the soul to commune with the divine self. While the experiences at the plane of the self are called bhoga, and the movement of life under the guidance of reason are called yoga. The experiences of the soul, freed from the limits of intellect, are the surging waves of moksha or liberation or self realization, which is the ultimate goal of this human embodiment, the journey of life. Even during one's daily life, there is a need to enter into sleep and thus be free even from the functions of intellect. The urge to turn away even from the intellect is a reflection of the truth that the self is beyond the intellect. When the veil of ignorance is removed by the purified intellect, one abides in the self. The world revealed at the plane of the senses is the world consisting of likes and dislikes, joys and sorrows, and manifold uncertainties and fears. The world revealed at the plane of the purified intellect is the world of drifting thoughts and ideas, which, like silvery clouds float in the boundless expansion of the self. It is the world where one ascends the heights of wisdom. So the path, it's called the Shreya Marg. Shreya is auspicious, the right path. However, there is a triad in human experience, both in the world of the senses and the world of the intellect. There is a limited subject, ego self, that must discover the world of externalized consciousness with the help of the limited mind and senses. Knowledge that arises at the plane of the spirit transcends the intellect. It does not require the limited instruments of mind, intellect, and senses. This plane is reached when a yogi sees objects blended with the senses withdrawing into the mind seeking the light of the intellect, and the intellect being illumined by the light of the self. The knowledge of the self, then, is the basic source of light that continues to illumine the intellect, mind, and senses. Therefore, when the self is known, all is known. Mind, intellect, senses all become accessories only. With relation to the knowledge of the self, whatever is known at the plane of the senses and intellect mind is an expression of ignorance, also known as neti neti, not this, not this, because the only true reality is the self or the Atman within you. Before the light of the sun, even the golden moon pales into insignificance. The knowledge of the self brings about complete detachment from the world, which is called anasakti, no more attachment. Thus, a yogi must abide in pure intellect. He must become a sthita pragya or a dhira, one whose intellect is steady in pleasure and pain, gain and loss, success and failure. When the light of intellect burns steadily, undistracted by the desires of the mind, it discovers itself as a limited emanation from the supreme light of the self. Human consciousness, rising above the illusions of the triad, which is the subject, object, and the relative experience relationship between the two, plunges into the absolute self, even as a river does as it merges into the ocean. This is the state of the highest samadhi. Herein the soul abides in its essential nature. So, just like a river, once it's merged into the ocean, cannot come back. It becomes part of the ocean. It is enjoying that bliss, much in the same way, enlightened souls are perpetually in bliss of the self as they have merged themselves at that level. Although they acknowledge the mind, senses, intellect, the practical realities of the world, everything they see and are aware of, but they are not attached to them because they are enjoying the ocean feeling that they have now attained. The seeker of knowledge, having discovered the self, attains the culmination of the process of knowing. Thus, in the fire of that spiritual knowledge, he allows his very sense of individuality to be sacrificed and consumed. He gives up his false identity in order to find his real self. He attains moksha or liberation, which is the goal of yoga, and it is the mission of life. Actually, if you look at our mission, we always say, Swami Jyotirmayananda Society, the journey to self realization. So it's all a journey for us till we reach the destination. We should be practically, mentally, emotionally, physically aligned with this desire, which is a shubh desire or an aspiration. It's a healthy desire, it's an auspicious thought that should continue at all times in the undercurrents of our personality, whether we are working or whatever activity we may be doing. Do not be a bhogi. Bhogi is a helpless slave to the objects of the world. Be a yogi. Assert your mastery over the senses, over the circumstances in life, and finally attain mukti. Mukti is liberation from the fetters of karma and the network of desires, and freedom from the cycles of birth and death. Herein, the root cause of all sufferings, ignorance, is eradicated and supreme bliss is experienced. May God bless you. So, I hope you enjoyed this deep chapter which talks about the illusions of the senses and how to um, stay focused and be established in the self, and to avoid the sense pleasures which are nothing but transient objects that drag us downwards. They retard our performance and progress. So may you be established in the self. Hari Om Tat Sat. This is Swami Nikhilananda. I will see you in tomorrow's satsang, and we will be covering a very important topic: how to overcome hatred.